So today we're with Trevor Watkins, who is an assistant professor of management and the Faust Professor of Business. And you are here today because of your Teaching Excellence Award for this previous year. So thank you for being on. And can you tell me a little bit about how you got from point A to being a faculty here at WT?
Yeah, so I've been here for 2 years now, just finished year two. It's been a privilege to be here at WT. I never thought I'd call myself a Texan, but anyway, I'm proud to be a Texan, and it's been a privilege to be here in the Lone Star State. I originally grew up in Utah, Intermountain West, and then I completed my PhD studies in Washington, Pacific Northwest, and now I'm here in the southwest part of the country, and so I don't think you can get more variation in terms of climate, politics, cost of living, all these different things from these three different places. And so it's been a good experience for me to know that there's good people and bad people everywhere you go. So it's great to be here.
So you're saying there's a difference between the Pacific Northwest and the Panhandle of Texas?
There is. Come to find out. So it took me one day to realize this when I got my cable installed. And when I got my cable installed, the technician came up to me and said things like, "Is there anything else I can do for you, sir?" And I was blown away at the courtesy, because that's not how it is in most other parts of the country, particularly up in the Seattle freeze, as they call it. So there's great people in Seattle as well, but being courteous and polite and saying hello are not their strong suits.
So now that you're a Texan, have you gotten used to driving and then doing the one finger up yet, or have you got that far yet? That's how you wave here. It's mandatory.
Yeah.
So if you see people waving to you and you don't know them, that's why, because it's just the...
Gotcha. Yeah. I don't drive too much here in Texas, so for good or bad. So I cycle to work. It takes me 4 minutes each day, and so I try to avoid all the crazy traffic here in the Canyon and Amarillo area. So it's pretty bad. Sometimes I have to wait 2 minutes extra to get to where I'm going. It's horrible.
That's one of our biggest problems is gridlock in Canyon. We need to put in 2 or 3 more lanes.
Yeah, definitely agree.
Perfect. So you like cycling to work? Is that your only means of transportation that you get around town, or do you walk, or like what's your...
Well, we do drive. We drive the kids to swim practice and things like that. So, although we sometimes also cycle with the whole family.
Nice.
So, we throw the baby into the caboose, and we've got, like just this mama duck and her ducklings type formation, mama and papa duck and their ducklings, as we go down these non-busy roads in Canyon, and sometimes we'll cycle on campus with all 6 of us, and it's a good time.
Well, that's cool. A little daisy chain.
Yeah.
Perfect. So jumping back to Washington, back to the Pacific Northwest, what made you decide to get a PhD, and why did you focus on management over other disciplines?
Sure. Yeah, so I originally, way back in the day, decade and a half ago, was an undergraduate student at Utah State University, which is in northern Utah. And there I was exploring different majors. I knew I wanted to major in business because I'm highly practical and like to solve problems. And so that attracted me to the School of Business there, the John Huntsman School of Business. And so as I was exploring different degree options, finance, accounting, I eventually fell in love with the HR management idea, just because as I've kind of been better able to articulate over the years, I think working with humans is dynamic. Working with computers is not dynamic. And working with humans via management, there's so much opportunity to either do amazing things or to fail. As we teach, or as I teach in my classes, just as one quick example, we discuss the Flint water crisis, where thousands of Americans were poisoned in Flint, Michigan, all in the name of saving $5 million, but it ended up costing them billions of dollars, which was all not an engineering problem, was not a water safety. This was a management problem that went south. And so there's so many opportunities at a macro level to do good in the world through management. But even at the micro level, when you're a manager and you have employees on your team, you have so much opportunity to influence them for the better and to help them have productive lives, at the same time to be a bad boss and to make life hell for them. So there's so much opportunity there that isn't there in other disciplines. And so that's what attracts me to management. So I completed my studies there, and I got a job working for a mid-sized credit union in Salt Lake City, Utah. And I was the HR and training manager there. And so my task was to facilitate employee engagement throughout the whole company, and did that for 6 years, and realized that I continued to learn and grow and want to understand management science. I completed an MBA while I was there at the credit union, and even post MBA, I was still reading these HBR articles and these other management science articles, and so that was a good signal to me that maybe I should explore doing that even more, maybe doing it too much through a PhD studies program. So that's what drew me to the PhD.
Nice. So it sounds like you have a lot of workplace experience. So do you try to pull that into the classroom? Do you try to keep those things separate? How does that work out with
You need
your
to
style?
integrate those. So if you don't, it becomes too theoretical and nobody knows what you're talking about, and it's not useful. So as much as you can connect the dots between theory and practice, that's where you want to be. You need both, though. You need the theory and the understanding of what causes what in the workplace, because of all these variables that are at play. If you don't try to sit down and understand what's happening, then you're doing yourself a disservice, and you're just going with your gut, and turns out your gut was just indigestion, and you poisoned thousands of people in Flint, Michigan. So we need to understand the theory, but then we also need to connect it to real life. And so I do my best to bring in my own personal experiences from my years as a practitioner, provide examples of this principle that we're talking about to make it more real for the students. And I always try to get students' own experiences on the table too, as we're talking about these concepts.
Nice. And so you mentioned the Flint, Michigan thing, but what's your favorite concept to teach in class? Like, what's the thing that every year you're like, oh, I get to teach X this year. I'm so excited about it. What's that lesson?
I think there's probably a few of them, but since we mentioned the Flint, Michigan thing, another example I pitch to students is the Wells Fargo fake account scandal, and the corollary and parallel across these two real life examples is that there's managers engaging in unethical behavior. And so I think I am drawn to that, even though I'm not an ethical behavior researcher. But I'm drawn to this because I think it's really important for especially undergraduate students who might not have as much work experience to realize that there's organizations out there that you need to watch out for. And I make sure to make the point that there are also great organizations, and that they need to find those great organizations, not become cynical, thinking all organizations are just untrustworthy, but to make the point that there are corrupt organizations out there, because I feel like in our current society and culture, we tell people everything is awesome. Or we tell students that you should get the job that pays you the most money. But there's probably a correlation between the job that pays you the most money and the job that's going to treat you with disrespect, treat you just like a number, and do potentially shady things. So that's why I really gravitate towards teaching these cases of this unethical behavior, because I think for many students, it's their first exposure to these ideas of there's bad things that happen out there.
I'm going to go fully off script here. So do you think that an organization can change ethics, or do you think ethics drives the organization? Is it people? What about that? I know I just opened a huge topic, but
sure.
I'm not curious.
Well, ethics, I think ethics shouldn't be a separate standalone topic. It shouldn't be, it should be integrated with everything we do. So behaving or striving towards goals is imbued with morality, because it's a value we have and we're striving to realize that value. So morality is not reserved to just religious people. So morality is about prioritizing our values and identifying what's right and wrong. So even in the least religious sense, we could say running a 100-meter dash That's imbued with morality because it implies that there are things that you do in your daily life that help you accomplish your goal of getting the fastest 100-meter dash. And there's things in your life that you can do that are going to prevent you from having the best time in your 100-meter dash. And so suddenly, if that's your goal, there's all of these sub-goals that populate, and you have a values hierarchy. And I should probably not eat that donut. I should probably exercise every day. And so suddenly we have a morality of things that are good and bad. And that's in the most secular, non-religious example of a 100-meter dash. But then, we are more than just creatures who run down the road. We have relationships. We have goals as organizations that are a lot more important than running fast. And so the morality is everywhere. And so ethics is ingrained in organizations in everything they do. Organizations have values. And so I think it's important to realize that, and important to be upset when organizations say that they're going to do A, but then act completely differently.
Nice. I dig that. So you brought up something here that I'm going to combine a few things together. One, you mentioned that theory and practice need to be together to be able to teach really well. And two things you brought up there were about eating healthy and working out. And so bridging that over into your research area, you are actually quite a good researcher, and some of the areas you focus on are like sleep and being able to exercise at work and eating healthy and things like that. So there's two parts to this question. One, can you talk a little bit about your research, just kind of the overarching through lines? And two, why have you never given me a special thank you because you think about me when you think about how you shouldn't be a worker?
I don't know what you mean by that.
That I'm unhealthy, I don't sleep well, and I eat terribly, and I don't exercise. So I should get like a nod, like, oh, just follow Robert for a day, and I'll get more research ideas.
Okay.
That's what I was going for on that.
Well, first off, there's boundaries to any principle. And so maybe you can counterbalance and compensate for that because of your true commitment to WT and your gregarious nature and the fact that everyone loves you. So maybe that counterbalances those things.
I accept that.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, my research is in employee well-being, and that stems from my first few years post-graduation from undergrad. I went from being an undergraduate student where I was walking around campus all day, going from this class to that class, going and playing basketball after class, to the corporate setting where I was sitting in a chair for like 50 hours a week. And, I was driving to work and driving home from work. And I was not playing basketball with other students. And so, I developed severe lower back pain, and it really impacted the way I worked. I couldn't focus. I'd have to take breaks just to walk around because I couldn't focus because of my pain. And I thought, why did nobody tell me to take care of myself in business school? That's the number one thing that's limiting my career success right now. And so that's kind of where my research passion was born, because I realized that our body, spirit, and mind are interconnected. And if you don't take care of your body, your spirit and mind have a harder time. And in our knowledge economy, it limits your ability to produce, be productive, even if you have a sedentary occupation. And so that's kind of my underlying motivation for all the research I do with physical activity and eating. I'm doing a research project right now on employee break taking, and I'm trying to highlight how supervisors sometimes stigmatize their employees for taking breaks, despite work breaks being incredibly important for employee productivity. And really, I guess there's a little bit of an agenda there with the message being that employees need to take care of themselves if they want to have the greatest chance of having a successful career.
So I saw an Instagram post, so this is pretty much academic research, of two side-by-side pictures, and it was showing work, and then you step up, and then you continue to progress because you're taking a break, and so that allows you to go up. And the other one is you progress, and then you just burn out completely. So it was a pretty good Instagram post. So I think it's a good idea. If it's for the gram, it's good enough for the academy. That's what I've heard.
Yeah, but I mean, burnout is a real thing. and we work. Our careers are 40 years long, and if you don't pace yourself, you'll burn out and quit a great job because you can't do it anymore, and maybe you should have just dialed back 10% to be able to do it sustainably for more years, year after year after year after year after year.
I dig that. So, since you're going to have a long career, what's your favorite course to teach?
I don't really have a favorite course. I'm probably more focused on concepts. So I'll circle back to the unethical behavior. I'm also intrigued by motivation and also these employee well-being topics. So I teach a segment in my organizational behavior course on workplace recovery, where we talk about these different types of energy: physical energy, um, cognitive energy, spiritual energy, emotional energy, and how employees should put recovery practices into place so when they're not working, they can prepare themselves for the next day at work rather than going home and doing something that stresses them out. So they show up from work to work the next day already exhausted. So I like that one because it's highly practical. It's relevant for any worker. It's not teaching some esoteric leadership principle that's going to be relevant in 32 years when they hit the C-suite and are now a senior vice president. But it's applicable to the students even as they're working towards their degrees at WT. And so that's one of the concepts I really enjoy teaching.
Nice. So, if I were to say, is that one of those things that makes you kind of different from other people? Is that particular concept, or what makes you unique as a faculty when it comes to interacting with students and/or teaching students?
Sure. There's probably two answers there. The first one is kind of my proposal is that less is more. So working less and putting those few extra hours a week towards taking care of yourself. And I don't just mean like physical activity eating, because I also focus on relationships being equally, if not more important than running down the road. But taking care of yourself relationally, physically, those 5 hours a week that you work, that you don't work and put towards those things is going to facilitate your success. And I think that's kind of a unique idea, because I think the message at business schools is that more is more. More clients is more. More stock is better. A bigger office is better. Merging and becoming a bigger company is better. And so there's this more is more assumption in the College of Business that I kind of push up against and kind of stand out and say, well, more is not always more, because we don't ever talk about the cost of that extra. We don't talk about the cost of having a 10% higher salary. Now I have to drive, I'm in my car an additional 7 hours a week commuting to the inner city of wherever it is. And we don't talk about the cost of those extra hours that come with the promotion that prevent you from engaging with your family that 17 years from now you're going to regret. And so that's probably what sets me apart, is I'm kind of championing this less is more idea.
Nice. So, do you get all the econ folks saying like diminishing marginal utility or anything like that?
I probably disagree, or my philosophy is probably in strongest disagreement with the economists who think we're rational decision makers and try to maximize value. I strongly disagree. We are irrational as human beings, and we do a lot of self-sabotaging behavior. So.
I didn't realize we could do this conversation by picking on econ folks. I would have gone a completely different direction, because that may be my favorite thing. So we should restart and do it all over again, making fun of them. But so thinking about students as a whole, a student walks by our office and says like, hey, I need some advice. What would you say is your best piece of advice for a student?
Sure. Well, I'm very hesitant to give advice because, first off, experience bears out that people who are quickest to give advice are the least qualified to do so. You can go to any social media platform to realize that truth. But also, the world is complex, and so you really need to understand an issue before you provide a solution. And so you pitch this scenario of a student coming by and asking for advice there, but it expands beyond that. We think that there's consulting firms out there, and they think that they can provide a solution to one of their clients over lunch. Like, okay, let's have this 60-minute conversation. I'll tell you what you need to do to get your organization back on track, which is ridiculous. You need to know something deeply, understanding all the nuances, all the hurdles that would take hours, days, months, years to provide advice in a way that's really going to be helpful. And so if somebody asks me for advice, I instantly try to understand more about the situation, and I'm really slow to provide advice. I will, and I do, but I think that's the number one thing you can do as an advice giver is fully understand the issue rather than shortchange somebody and give advice not knowing all the intricate nuances.
I dig it. So the answer of you should do marketing is probably not the best advice. Okay, we'll change that up a bit. So you talked a little bit earlier about the mama and papa and ducklings and whatnot. Is there anything interesting? And do you want to note about your family or anything like that, or do you want to cut that out?
No, it's a privilege to be a father. It's parenting is difficult because it exposes you to your weaknesses, and who likes that, right? And it's frustrating and at times, but with that comes reward and seeing children grow and develop, and having a hand in that is just really fulfilling. We I think we sometimes face a lot of untruths in how we contribute and make the world a better place. I think we have this idea that the number of followers I have on my social media is my barometer for how influential I am, or the number of people who read my journal article or buy my book is how I'm impacting the world. And so it's very much of like a weak tie. How many people give me 10 seconds of attention? Whereas I really truly believe that the way we make impact in the world is with deep connections. And our family and friends are the way, which is really a local argument. It is really the way we impact the world for the better. It's a local argument. So, expanding beyond our family and friends, we might influence our local community. So I have a lot better chance of influencing students and colleagues here at WT than I do, at changing the world and having some person in New York read my journal article, or rather spend 30 seconds reading the abstract of my journal article. That's not, I don't think, that's important. It's important to produce research. It's important to get ideas out there, but that pales in comparison into the level and extent of impact that we can have at our local communities, in our families.
So. That'd be good. I like the idea of regionality because then you have a better understanding of who's in that region, right? It's easier to know 5 people than it is 50 people than it is 5,000. So I like that concept.
And what you say, so knowing these people is perhaps a prerequisite, or at least helps exponentially at influencing people.
I dig it. So is this? I've never read How to Win Friends and Influence People, but is that a part of it? If not, you should add that addendum. Rewrite the book, and then if you get a lot of people to read your book, oh no, we were going against what you said there.
Yeah. No, it's a spot on book. I read it years ago, and I remember one chapter was conveying the idea of knowing people's names and calling them by names. A person's name is the sweetest sound to them in any language, I think is the quote from the book. And yeah, so how are you going to influence some person in New York who you don't even know, and they don't even know you? It's a hard bargain.
Interesting. I like that. So are there any interests or hobbies you want to talk about, or something that you find particularly useful, particularly in your downtimes that you have?
Sure. Yeah. Integrating hobbies with family is I'm a big integrator. I try to integrate my research with my non-work time with my family. I don't have my kids coding my data collections yet, but that's on the horizon. So, but so like I referenced the family bike ride. I've got my children on the swim team. I do need to have some personal individual time as well. So I'm often in Palo Duro running trails. So
Nice.
I enjoy trail running and training for the Palo Duro 50 miler right now. So looking to enjoy the 10 hours on the trail on October 23rd.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Well, that's fun. So, is there anybody in particular you'd like to talk about that has had a major impact on your life? Like, who's that one figure you can always go back to, or something like that, where you think, oh, what would person X do, or something like that?
Yeah, I think I do have a couple of people who have strongly influenced me. Um, I will note too that I think we all influence each other, even in mild senses. And I won't say that I've only sought or gained inspiration from people smarter or more competent than me. I think we have great opportunities to learn from everybody. I can make specific references to people who probably influenced me more than others. I certainly credit my parents and my family for making the sacrifices on my behalf of making sure I had a good childhood. And I also credit my advisor for his approach to the academic world. He's incredibly inclusive. So there's anecdotes and stories of him being at our conferences and hailing a cab and seeing these poor PhD students over there. Hey, are you guys PhD students? Hey, I could come join my cab, and just being very inclusive. And so when I worked with him, he treated me as a peer, even though I was a first year PhD student who had no idea what he was doing. And so I think I'm egalitarian in my approach to life, and I am disgusted at classism and people who think they're better because they have a PhD or because they have a big house or a fancy car is ridiculous, and that turns me off more than anything else. And so the fact that someone who's this endowed chair, incredibly successful professor, sees first-year PhD students on an equal playing field was incredibly meaningful to me. And it's taught me lessons that you can still be amazingly successful without being exclusive, especially to those who are less privileged than you.
Well, thank you for being here with us today, and we look forward to seeing you more in the classroom and in journal articles.
Yeah, thanks, Robert. It's a pleasure and a privilege to be here at WT. So thank you for the time.